this video is going to be a little different, but it's going to be awesome because lots of people have asked about my trip and how I drove down through Central America to get to El Salvador. And now you're going to get a whole new perspective of somebody who's doing it on a motorcycle. Here we go. Hi there. Okay, we are at El Salvador's Starbucks, or in other words, the coffee cup. And I have met up with an awesome traveling YouTuber, Mr. Eric Peterson.
Hola.
We are going to talk today about his awesome trip down through Central America. So you guys can get a little bit of perspective, because lots of people have asked, well, but can I drive there? And what can I bring? And my experience is very único, I guess you could say. It's been very different from a typical experience. So Eric today is going to help us talk about what driving down through Central America is like now in 2023. So first of all, Eric, tell them all about your channel and all about the amazing journey that you're on.
My name is Eric Peterson. I'm from Minnesota, central Minnesota, right above Minneapolis. And I've been living abroad for 15 years or so. Right now, I'm in the middle of a trip that I'm doing, which is part of my channel. My channel is Generic Expats. Right? What I do and what my objective is I share all the information that I experience while I'm going through cities from Mexico all the way down south. So I'm planning to go as far south as I can, and hopefully, if I don't get smashed by some kind of chicken bus in the process, I'm gonna make it all the way down to South America and maybe to Brazil and Argentina, that area. So right now we're in El Salvador. I crossed Mexico in 6 months, and I stayed in 4 different cities. And then I stayed, so that was 6 months there, and then I did Guatemala in about 10 weeks. And then now I've been almost 2 months in El Salvador. So what I do in my channel is I basically give information about what I think are the most important things that expats should know before deciding to move to a new country. So this is kind of an informative, educational channel where I give them information, you, the audience, about accommodation, about cost of living, about safety, weather, about the different excursions and travel options, things for entertainment such as bars, restaurants, and also what I'm doing also, which is a great reason why we are together right now, is I'm
We're a great hookup here.
interviewing expats, which we have Jenny, the super expat here in El Salvador, and her amazing story. So I love sharing the stories of people that actually are living here. So as I'm traveling through Latin America, I'm not living in any place longer than 2 months. I spent 2 months in Mazatlan, and that was the longest I stayed anywhere. And I plan on staying 6 weeks maximum in every city as I continue south.
Awesome. Okay, so since you have so much, you have a lot more international experience. And I've got a lot of international experience too. So, for us, when we go to a new country, we kind of know to drop our judgment and to kind of try and blend in with the culture and not go in there with a whole bunch of shoulds and a whole bunch of this is right and this is wrong. Have you always been as laid back and as able to go into wherever, or have you ever had any scary situations in your journey down?
Well, scary, definitely. Everyone has the trauma or their difficult situations, complications. I've had difficult problems here and there. One specifically was in Brazil. But I've been traveling abroad. My first trip was at 18. So that was my first real experience with massive different culture. I was in Turkey. My first trip was to Turkey, and I was like, wow, crazy. But I started living abroad when I was 20. I started doing some international studies programs in Chile and Brazil. And that was kind of when I first started being able to adapt to new cultures and kind of adapt to local ways of life, and kind of being a lot more open-minded and not kind of being so basically how I was in Minnesota. The Minnesotan way doesn't work in other places. So you just need to be able to create this new personality and this new understanding of where you are to fully enjoy it. So that's kind of something that I developed as I was in my young 20s. And now it's pretty easy for me since I've been doing it for so many years.
Sometimes I life coach people that are making that transition to a new culture, and I call it a phrase that a dear friend of mine coined is you authenticate. Or in other words, you find this mix between your authentic self and integrating into the society and the place that you're living. And I use a lot of those principles, those major life-changing principles in my life coaching. And that's really what it comes to, because you have to blend some, but you don't want to completely lose yourself at the same time.
You don't want to completely lose that ego, but you need to lose part of the ego that makes life difficult. Right?
You know.
That's a good phrase. I haven't heard that one before.
Yeah, it's an awesome one.
Huh?
Yeah. So a bunch of people have asked me about driving down to El Salvador. How possible it is, how impossible it is, if it's worth it. What to bring, all that kind of stuff. What has your driving experience been coming down from Mexico, through Mexico, and through Guatemala? Because I mean, lots of people told me when I was driving down of, whatever you do, don't stop because they're gonna rob you, and the cops are gonna ask for bribes, and well, yeah, that kind of happened. But since you've done a lot more driving through Central America, can you clarify a little bit about that?
I don't know how much more I've done than you. You seem like you've done a lot through Central America, but okay, so I started my motorcycle trip in Minnesota, and I just, my first trip was a big trip to the US, and that was great. And then before I did my YouTube channel and my generic expats videos, I did a year and a half driving around Mexico in total on my motorcycle. And I crossed through many different borders. I crossed Matamoros, which is in southern Texas. I crossed Laredo, which is southwestern Texas. I crossed Ciudad Juarez. And I didn't have any issues ever at any of these places. I do speak Spanish. I have been speaking Spanish since I was 21. So I think maybe having that, that language ability really makes things a lot easier. It makes things flow smoother, even though I never had a completely flawless situation. For example, my Mexico trip, I didn't pay for my visa when I went and crossed the border in Laredo. So I got to the border and I crossed the border, the Mexican border, with Guatemala and Tecunuman, which is next to, what's it called? Tapachula. And when I got to the border, I was like, here's my visa, my visa expires next week. I usually leave a couple of days before my visa expires. I don't like paying fines and having to worry about that. And basically when I did that, they're like, oh yeah, so your visa was only for 5 days. I'm like, 5 days? No, I mean, I have a temporary import permit for my motorcycle. And the motorcycle permit is the amount of time you get on the visa. Mm-hmm. You don't get more than what your visa is. I mean, that's just what has happened every time I go to Mexico. So basically in Mexico, when I enter into Mexico, and the Mexican visa is almost always, I think it's always, or used to be, always 6 months, right? 180 days. Now, it's kind of changing in certain airports because of the massive wave of Americans and Canadians, and the expat community is hitting hard there, and then the Mexicans are doing what you talked about in Costa Rica. They're kind of squeezing on the tourists. So They sometimes only give a month, they sometimes give 3 months. But I have noticed that I haven't met anyone that has done a border crossing by land that has gotten less than 180 days. Pretty much, you're almost guaranteed 180 days when you cross, if you want to do a big trip in Mexico by car or by motorcycle. Did you have 180 days when you crossed?
No, I had 30 days. But, well, actually,
you always have the stories.
Okay, well, that's just it. Okay, I didn't know about overlanders, and I didn't know it. Technically, all I knew was what was on the Mexican website. And the Mexican website said there is no tourist land travel through Mexico because it's the pandemic.
Oh, it was during the pandemic. Okay.
As far as I knew,
less different because that's the pandemic.
Yeah, as far as I knew, Mexico was closed. So actually, I kind of, and the first time I tried to cross, they totally shut me down and sent me back. And then the second time, well, I kind of got in the wrong line, and I just kind of ended up at a stoplight in Eagles Point, and
that's in Texas, right?
Yeah. Eagles Point is, I think it's called Piedras Negras.
Right.
Yeah. So at one point I paid my little $4 to cross the bridge. And then when I got to the other side, I think I was in the wrong line. And because all of a sudden I was just at a stoplight in Piedras Negras, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is the easiest border crossing ever. And yeah, so we drove for like 8 hours to just get away from the border, because that's what I felt was the most dangerous part, was near the border. So it wasn't until Chiapas that I realized, wait a minute, our passports were never stamped. And technically, I didn't have a TPS either, or TIP, yeah, either. And so yeah, it was my checking out of Mexico that I actually ended up checking in. So I was an illegal immigrant in Mexico.
By accident.
By accident.
Right, not trying to make it there, right?
Yes,
You're not trying to be part of that crowd.
No, I was completely winging it.
Sounds like one of your stories.
Yes,
Sounds
exactly.
like one of your stories.
Exactly.
So I haven't done that. Okay, my generic expats channel, fully legal. Fully legal. 100% legal, always.
Okay,
I haven't.
yeah.
So I haven't ever paid any fines for visas ever, and I've been in countries, many random countries, all on visas for tourists for the past 15 years.
Can you tell them exactly how the whole tip thing works and how the whole visa works?
Okay, so when entering to Mexico, you will be crossing the bridges usually, and you pay like you said, you pay a toll, and you make it over this bridge that will bring you to Mexico, and you're like, okay, well, what? Like, where's my visa? where do I go? What do I do? You have to already know where to go, because your phone's gonna stop working, like the internet's gonna stop working, and you need to know, okay, I need to stop at this place because I need to do my my tourist visa, my personal visa, and then the car's visa, which is the temporary import permit. And sometimes it's in the same building, sometimes it's not. So in Matamoros, I think it was the same building, and Laredo was the same building. Ciudad Juarez was not. So it depends on which city you go to. So when it's in the same building, like Nuevo Laredo, went to a building, I got my tourist visa for me to personally be there, and then I did the TIP. And actually, that's a great border crossing, by the way. It seemed to be really empty. And yeah, it seems like a good place to do it. And yeah, so I did the tourist visa, and then right next to it was the tip, and I had all the documents. So you need to make sure you have all the documents prepared. There's a lot of different things to have, so I'm not exactly sure what to make as a list for you, because I have my own list and I just write it down, and it's going to be your car's title. I made sure to have insurance, American insurance for the car, just in case. I mean, sometimes they ask for it, sometimes they don't, so that's something to keep in mind. Yeah, obviously your driver's license. I made copies of my driver's license. Your passport. I made copies of my passport. So I had copies of everything, the original and copies. And I think that was it. So those are the main documents you need. And there might be a couple more, so don't take it as just that word, because there might be a couple other things I forgot. And you need to show your visa, your tourist visa, that you already need to have done by that point. So yeah, I got that, and it's given to you. You have to pay like it was $500 when I crossed, which I think it was 10,000 pesos. I don't know if they keep it. I don't know if they keep it pegged to the dollar or whatever, but it was 10,000 pesos, so that's like $600 or $700 right now. And yeah, you have to pay the deposit, because if you don't exit the country within the time that your tip is allowed, before it expires, you'll lose the deposit. And that's, depending on the year of your car, or your vehicle. Like my motorcycle was probably cheaper than what you got for your car. Mine was 10,000 pesos when it was 20 to the dollar, $500. It was maybe 1,000. I don't know what it was for your car. How much did you pay the deposit?
Well, I paid the deposit down at the border to Guatemala, and so I think it was $400 that I paid, and then I had to go and stay in a hotel overnight to come back, because I couldn't do the deposit and the exit on the same day. So I kind of entered one day, and then the next day I came back and I left Mexico.
Always the good stories. Good stories. So yeah, you need to make sure to check that date and make sure to leave before that, because you don't want to lose whatever deposit you give. And depending on your vehicle, the date, what year your vehicle is from, how nice it is, that's going to be the amount of the deposit you pay.
Now, what about roads in Mexico? Because lots of people are afraid of cartels on the roads and things like
Okay,
that.
let's start with the two types of roads. There's two types of roads. There's the public roads, and then there's the toll roads. My first trip, I always listened to the locals. They're like, do not ever go on the public roads. Public roads, no, so dangerous. And I barely did any public roads on my first 6-month trip, and I had no problems. I did mostly toll roads, and obviously you can't only be on tolls always, but mostly toll roads, but they're pretty expensive. That's the thing. Mexican toll roads are expensive, but there is one major benefit, and the big benefit is, I don't know if you were the crazy wild driver like me, but I was ripping 100 miles an hour on those roads. There's no traffic police. They don't try and give you tickets, and especially on the toll roads, they're private roads. There's no police just waiting to give you tickets. So you basically, when you pay those tolls, you are given a free ticket to go as fast as you want. That's pretty much literally how it was. And I didn't learn that until my second or third time.
I don't know if we should be disseminating that kind of information on the internet.
This is just based on personal experience that my first year and a half driving in Mexico, I was always obeying the law because I was so worried. I was like, oh my God, this is going to be so scary and people are going to stop me and blah, 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 blah. All the cops, whenever I was stopped, were super friendly. There's a lot of checkpoints, military checkpoints, and you have to show them maybe your passport sometimes, or you just show your license, and usually they're just there to maintain the peace and keep everyone calm. And it has to do with narcos as well, but I never had any idea of narcos being anywhere near me at any point. I went to.
Do you just pay the bribe and keep going, or?
Oh well, when it comes to police,
yeah.
I've paid many bribes, but only a couple of them have been on my motorcycle because they don't really mess around with people on bikes.
Yeah.
So I don't know how it is with your car because I haven't ever driven in these countries by car, but on motorcycles, I don't think many people do.
Yeah.
Drive in Mexico and Central America.
They think you're poor, and so
exactly. So
so
the
they're like, nah, not gonna worry with him. He doesn't have any money anyway.
The motorcycle in Latin America is the poor man's car.
Yes.
So if a police sees you on a bike, they're not going to even stop you half the time because they think you won't even have money for the bribe. So I literally have had zero issues on my motorcycle. So this is one of the major benefits. There's other benefits such as it's better for gas and blah blah blah. It feels more free and stuff. But yeah, so a lot more often than not, if you're driving a really nice car, you probably will be stopped a lot more than if you're driving a motorcycle. Even if it's a nice motorcycle, they're like, oh well, it's a motorcycle, they can't have that much money, and that's just their mentality in pretty much all of Latin America. And the typical bike is a lot smaller, so they're not used to seeing a $15,000 BMW. They're looking at Chinese $500, $1,000 bikes. So my bike is not super nice, but it's also not super shitty. So I'm kind of in the middle ground, so I haven't had any issues with that.
Okay.
So driving through Mexico, in terms of police, yeah, if you're in a car, you might have to figure out what you're gonna do beforehand. If you're gonna try and speak to them in Spanish, if you speak Spanish, or if you're going to just play the dumb gringo like you mentioned before, do that little trick and just wait for them to just say, oh, it's too difficult to get a bribe, and they'll just go away. And that happens, it usually will happen if you do it and you're really, motivated for that result.
Let me share a little bit of my example, because yes, we did go through, and yes, they stopped us, and yes, they asked us for a bribe, but my daughter, my 18-year-old, was actually driving at the time. And she has a little bit of Spanish, but we had already practiced something we called the dumb gringo. And so when we got pulled over, she, what it is you kind of act like you don't know a lick of Spanish, and you just talk in English, and if they don't know English, it kind of goes pretty fast. But usually one of them will come over with some medium English, and the way it went with my daughter is he said, okay, well, you were going too fast, and so we have a ticket for you, but it's Thursday, and you'd have to go to this courthouse, but the judge isn't in town right now, so you're gonna have to wait till Monday to go to the courthouse, or you can just pay us the $20, $40 now, and we'll just take care of it. That's how it went. And my daughter was just like, what? Huh? And they're looking at her, and what they did is they took her driver's license, and they pretty much said, well, you can't have your driver's license back until you take care of this ticket. And she's like, and so she's like, what? Oh, I have a ticket? And she's like, okay, so where do I go? And they're like, well, you've got to go into town, and you've got to go to the courthouse, and the judge isn't there, and he's not going to be there till Monday, and it's going to really mess up your plans. And she was just like, okay, so where exactly is the courthouse? Can you show me on my Google Maps where the courthouse is so I can be there on Monday? And he's like, well, why don't we just take care of it now? She's like, no, that's okay. I'll go to court. That's fine. And
just try and make it as difficult as possible, right?
And the guy was getting so frustrated, and then they came and they tried to look through our car, and his supervisor opened up my van and saw, what? It's a mom and a whole bunch of girls, and he's like, are you crazy, woman? And I was just like, hi. And I'm like, everybody talk English. And we're all like, hi, how are you doing? And yeah, so they just kind of got flustered and said, okay, here's your license back. Go slower. And yeah, but we got launched on the Tupalos. They have literally, how did you know where the Tupalos are? Because they have speed bumps. On a 60-mile-per-hour highway, they will have speed bumps in the middle of nowhere.
So typically in Mexico, another benefit of going on toll roads is the fact that there aren't really any speed bumps, right? They're typically really long stretches of newly paved roads. Typically, I paid for some terrible toll roads in Sinaloa. Those were the worst in all of Mexico. I think I went on. I had to pay to go on these terrible roads, potholes everywhere. But generally, they're going to be really nice and flat. You can go really fast, and there aren't any speed bumps at all. The public roads will have lots of speed bumps, and the public roads typically go through little pueblos. And then sometimes there's massive cars just bumper to bumper. If you're in a car and you get into some of these pueblos on the public road, man, it's going to take you forever. If you're on a bike, just go around it. So another bike benefit. But if you're doing the public roads, you have to expect that some of them are going to have massive traffic jams, and it might take hours just to go through a pueblo because of one couple random set of trucks that are dropping off some oranges or something. So yeah, those things happen. And yeah, you can't really know because half the time there aren't signs. Usually there's signs that point down and it says, here's the speed bump, but you don't really know. And if it's like, for example, that's another reason why if you start driving really early in the morning, you're gonna have the sun right in your eyes. If you're going in that direction, in certain direction, what is it? Sun rises in the east, right? Mm-hmm. So if you go east in the morning, you probably won't be able to see them because you're gonna have the sun in your eyes. If you go west at night, you probably won't be able to see them because you have the sun in your eyes, and there usually aren't signs. So it's kind of like you just have to plan the time that you drive properly.
And what was the best times of the day to drive for you? What's your recommendation?
I always drive between 9 and 5. I usually don't start before 9 because, there's sometimes the rush hour traffic, pico, la hora pico, and that's not fun to drive through. So I try and start around the end of that, around the end of the rush hour, and then the rush hour at night starts around 6. So you want to get there before sunset, and usually sunsets before 6, before 5:30. So you want to make sure to try and get to your location by 4:30, and leave. I usually leave 9 or 10, depending on how much I'm doing that day. So every day is different. For example, I'm going to drive to Honduras on Tuesday, and that's going to be. I haven't decided if I'm going to drive straight to my accommodation. I'm going to Gracias. Gracias is going north, right above the border. And it's going to be 6 hours, so probably going to try and start at 9 because the border crossing takes about 1 or 2 hours. And the border crossings are going to be, cancel the temporary import permit, and that takes half hour. Okay, cancel your tourist. The tourist visa is actually something that's nicer about this region, is that the CA4 has no issues with crossing borders. You don't have to cancel the visa and get a new visa. You literally just cross over, you show the visa that you have from where you entered the country, and then you can pretty quickly cross over. The only thing you need to do in this region, for example, from crossing Guatemala to Honduras, Guatemala to El Salvador, and El Salvador and all these countries to Nicaragua. You just need to show your tourist visa and then do the temporary import permit, which when I did that, going to El Salvador took, I think, at the border crossing from Guatemala to El Salvador, it took like an hour and a half maybe. And like, you know, I didn't have to do anything with my tourist visa. It was just the TIP. But sometimes they're kind of slow, and it was free, which was great here. I didn't have to pay anything to come into El Salvador.
No, wait. Was your tourist visa for 90 days or for 180
So
days?
my tourist visa in Guatemala, when I entered into Guatemala, was 90 days. And I stayed for 10 weeks. So, you know, what's 90 days is 3 months, right? And I stayed like 2.5 months. So I waited until like the end of that basically visa, and I got an extension in Guatemala City, and I was given another 90 days. So that supposedly that is valid through all of the CA4. But I left here, El Salvador, and I flew out, and I have a new visa now, which is the 180-day visa in El Salvador. But it's only valid in the other countries for the first 90 days.
Oh, okay.
So that's what I asked the immigration, like, so can I cross after the 90 days in like Honduras, Nicaragua? They're like, you can only use this visa 180 days for the first 90 days in the other countries. So that's another complicated thing. If you fly into here, you're not going to be able to use the full 180. So when I had my Guatemalan 180, those are supposedly valid because I extended. I paid the extra money for the next 90 days after my first 90 days. And that's when you get the 180 here, you only pay the one time. So I guess that's why it's not valid for maybe the payment purpose. I don't know what it is.
So if you're coming to visit, fly in, go see the other countries for 90 days. Go spend your first 90 days in Guatemala, Honduras, Nica, wherever you want to go. And then when those 90 days are up, come back to El Salvador for your next 90 days as part of the 180 days.
Right, because this is pretty much the only place where the last 90 are valid, according to the immigration I talked to this time.
Yeah.
Because I've been reading up on it on these like Facebook groups, and it's super confusing because each country kind of has their own rules, and they kind of respect each other's rules, but not really. So you just kind of have to know what exactly they're allowing at the time, I guess, because things change pretty constantly.
Yeah, well, things are changing a lot in El Salvador. Yeah. So again, as he explained, the process is when you go into a country, you get your visa, then you get your tip for your vehicle that you're driving, right? And you have to claim your aduana, that's customs, if you have more than $10,000 worth of something, anything. Then when you leave that country, you kind of trade it back in, you could say. And like when you left Mexico, you sat there and said, okay, I'm getting out of Mexico before my visa is expired, and here is my tip, and you actually got a refund back.
So the tip is what you leave the deposit on, and then when you cancel the tip, the temporary import permit, then you're given the deposit back. And that's the only country that I think charges deposits.
It's Mexico.
The only country I've been to that charges a deposit was Mexico, and I think it's because the U.S. has really cheap vehicles, and that's the country with the border where they can easily bring them down and sell them. So that a way to prevent that is to have the tip deposit.
Yeah, because cars are a lot cheaper in the U.S. than
Way
they are
cheaper.
in El Salvador.
Way cheaper.
And now we interrupt our normal program because right at this moment there was some commercial music that came on over the speakers and we had to stop recording.